Hey everyone, I'm Evander Locke. If you've ever worked hard to build something solid in your life, whether it's your career, your peace of mind, or just knowing you've done right by yourself, then you'll understand where this story starts. I thought I had my life figured out. Simple, stable, mine. Until the day I found out my own brother had dragged me into a financial disaster I didn't even know existed. And what I did next, well, let's just say it wasn't the quiet revenge story they probably expected from a guy like me. I've always believed that stability was something you built with your own two hands. I've always believed that stability was something you built with your own two hands, not handed down, not stumbled upon, but forged through sweat and quiet repetition. The kind of stability that doesn't make headlines. It's in the solid walls of the house you renovate yourself, the reliable hum of a well tuned engine, the steady beat of days that feel predictable, safe. I was proud of that life until the day I learned someone I trusted had ripped the foundation right out from under me. It was a Thursday, and the air felt heavier than usual. The kind of day that sits on your chest before anything's even gone wrong. I was wrapping up a job site downtown, small contracting project, nothing fancy, just shoring up some aging structural beams in a historic brownstone. Work that mattered, work that made sense, the kind of work where you see progress at the end of the day, not just numbers on a screen. My phone buzzed in my back pocket. I wiped the sawdust from my hands before fishing it out. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost, but something maybe that weight in the air made me swipe to answer. Mr. Locke? The voice on the other end was clipped, professional. This is Brenda Hathaway from Clarion Credit Union. I'm calling regarding your overdue mortgage payments. I frowned, stepping away from the crew's chatter, the clang of metal against wood. I don't have a mortgage with Clarion. A pause. Then the kind of polite but firm insistence that makes your stomach tighten. I believe there's been some confusion, she said. You're listed as the primary on a property loan taken out last year. $750,000. The balance is past due. My grip tightened on the phone. That's impossible. I have the paperwork here. Evander Locke, correct? Co-signed for Nathaniel Locke on a property in Westgate Heights. The name hit me like a slap. Nathan. My brother. I felt the ground shift beneath me, that familiar pull of something you thought was steady suddenly cracking. There's no way. I never signed anything like that. Her voice softened, just slightly. I'd be happy to email you the documentation. We're hoping to resolve this amicably before it escalates. Before it escalates, the words echoed. I ended the call, heart pounding harder than it should have. I stood there in the shadow of that old brownstone, feeling something cold creep up the back of my neck. The air smelled like dust and sweat and the faint iron tang of rusting metal. But all I could taste was betrayal. Nathan, I hadn't spoken to him in months. Not since the last family dinner where he'd spun his usual stories about new property deals, flipping this, investing in that. Always one move ahead, always on the cusp of some big win, always borrowing time. I sat in my truck, the engine idling beneath me as I stared at the email Brenda sent over. There it was, my name in neat digital ink right next to Nathan's, co-signer 750 grand, Westgate Heights. I scrolled through the attached files, disbelief turning into a slow burning anger that felt like a fuse sparking at the base of my spine. His signature, his details, his investment, but mine too. The house wasn't just mortgaged in his name, it was tied to me, to everything I'd built. The worst part, the signature could have been mine, close enough that without careful inspection, anyone would believe I'd signed off on this willingly. Nathan must have lifted it from an old contract, maybe one of the times I'd helped him lease an apartment or handle some minor paperwork back when I still believed he was just a little reckless, not dangerous. And now? Now he'd leveraged my name, my credit, my life. For what? I drove straight to his place, gripping the steering wheel like it could anchor me to what little control I had left. His condo sat in one of those newer developments that all looked the same, Polished stone facades, oversized windows, too much glass, and not enough soul. The kind of place Nathan would have called an investment, but really just screamed for attention. I barely knocked before pushing through the door. He was lounging on the couch, scrolling through his phone, wearing that smug grin he always slipped on like a second skin. Evander, he drawled, sitting up as if this was a casual visit. Didn't expect to see you. I tossed my phone onto the coffee table, the email open on the screen. What the hell did you do? He glanced at it, feigned confusion for half a heartbeat. It's not what you think. I leaned in, voice low and sharp. You used my name, my credit, without asking, without telling me. Nathan sighed, standing slowly, smoothing down the front of his shirt like he could iron out the tension in the room. Look, Ev, I needed backing for the Westgate deal. It was a guaranteed win. The market was booming. You know how it is. I stared at him, waiting for some kind of explanation that made sense, that justified using his own brother as collateral. The bank wouldn't approve the full amount on my credit alone, he continued, hands spreading in that familiar shrug. But with your name attached, easy. It's just paper, man. You weren't supposed to be involved. I had it covered. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. You forged my signature. I borrowed it, he shot back like it was some kind of joke. Look, I planned to pay it off before you ever noticed. You weren't even supposed to know. But I do know, I snapped. And now the loan's in default? Nathan's smile faltered. The cracks started to show. The market dipped. It happens, but we can fix it. No, I said, stepping back, the heat in my chest threatening to boil over. You can fix it. His eyes narrowed, that easy charm turning defensive. Come on, Evander, you know what this looks like. You think the bank's gonna care whose idea it was? Both our names are on it. They'll come after both of us. I stared at him, feeling something inside me break in a way I hadn't felt since our father died, since Nathan became the golden boy and I the reliable fallback. I didn't sign up for this, I said quietly. Nathan's voice softened, but it didn't make it any better. You're my brother. We've always had each other's backs. Not like this. The door clicked shut behind me as I walked out, leaving Nathan standing there in his perfect condo, his perfect smile cracking at the edges. I sat in my truck again, the weight of what he'd done pressing against my chest like a stone. I built my life piece by piece, steady hands and honest work, but now I was tethered to a sinking ship. And it was just the beginning. The morning after Nathan's confession felt like waking up with a weight on my chest I couldn't push off. I sat on the edge of my bed, the sunlight barely filtering through the blinds, casting long, narrow slashes of light across the hardwood floor. My hands gripped my knees like if I let go, the whole room would spin out from under me. I'd never wanted to be part of my family's business. Nathan and I had walked different paths from the start. He craved the spotlight, the deals, the endless pursuit of bigger and better. I wanted simplicity, stability, the quiet satisfaction of a good day's work, of solving structural problems no one else could see. But that conversation, the night before, it changed everything. I stared at my phone for a long time that morning. The screen was blank, but I could almost see the shape of Nathan's words hanging there, like smoke that wouldn't clear. It's not as bad as you think. We're family. We'll figure it out together. Together. That word tasted sour now. I opened my banking app. There it was. My name tied to a commercial property loan I'd never signed. $750,000. The number didn't even feel real at first. Just black text on a bright screen. I scrolled down, checking for signatures. Mine. A forgery so clean it chilled me. Nathan hadn't just bent the rules. He'd cracked them wide open and stitched my name into the wreckage. The worst part, I could still hear his voice, easy and charming when he pitched it. It's a win-win, Van. The bank needed a second name to sweeten the deal. You're solid. They trust you. I'm making the payments, not you. I should have known. Nathan never made plans for the long haul. He lived for the now, the next deal, the next big promise. But this time the stakes weren't just his. He dragged me into his mess without so much as a conversation. I needed answers. I needed to see the paperwork in person. I found Nathan that afternoon at one of his renovation projects, which was really just a half gutted office space he'd been trying to flip for months. The drywall was stripped down to the studs, wires coiled like veins across the ceiling. He stood near the back wall, tapping on his phone, oblivious to the hollow echo of his own footsteps in the empty space. Nathan, my voice cut through the stillness sharper than I expected. He looked up, a smile spreading across his face, too fast, too bright. Van, hey man, I was going to call you. Cut it, I snapped, stepping closer. I saw the loan. His grin faltered. Look, I know you're upset. Upset, Nathan. You signed my name on a $750,000 loan. You forged my signature. Do you even hear yourself? He shoved his hands into his pockets, rocking on his heels like a kid caught sneaking out past curfew. It's not like that. The bank needed collateral. You've got the credit, the reputation. It was a technicality. A technicality? I could feel my pulse hammering in my throat. This isn't a speeding ticket, Nathan. This is fraud. And now the market's tanked. Your properties are bleeding value, and the bank's breathing down our necks. Your neck, I corrected, pointing at him. You're the one who took the money. You're the one who made the calls. He ran a hand through his hair, eyes darting around the empty room like he was looking for an exit. I had no choice. The deals were lined up, the timing was perfect, and I needed backing. You've got the cleanest record in the family. The bank would have approved it without blinking. I stepped in close enough to smell the faint cologne he always wore, something expensive, masking the stink of desperation. You didn't even ask. Nathan's shoulders slumped, and for the first time, I saw the cracks. His mouth opened like he wanted to explain, but nothing came out. I'm not your safety net, Nathan, I said, softer now but no less sharp. I won't carry this for you. He snapped back then, his tone shifting, defensive, panicked. You think I wanted this? You think I don't know I screwed up? But this isn't just about me anymore. If this loan defaults, it's your name on the paperwork. They'll come for both of us. The whole family's reputation takes a hit. There it was, the guilt. The classic parish family tactic, twist the blade just enough to make me question whether walking away would make me the bad guy. But I wasn't biting this time. Nathan, I said, my voice low, steady, you've always been able to sell a lie better than anyone I know, but you sold the wrong one this time. He took a step back, his bravado crumbling for a second before snapping back into place. We can fix this, he insisted. We just need time. Help me hold the line. I shook my head. I'm not bailing you out. When I turned to leave, I felt his eyes burning into my back. But he didn't follow. What would you have done in my shoes? Sometimes the hardest thing isn't walking away, it's standing your ground. The silence between Nathan and me wasn't the comfortable kind that falls between two brothers after an argument. It was thick, suffocating. A wall built of resentment and unfinished conversations. Days passed. He didn't call. I didn't reach out. But the loan was still there, a ticking time bomb under my name. I couldn't pretend this would blow over. I spent the next week calling banks, researching legal options, poring over financial documents that I never thought I'd need to understand. I was an engineer. My world was blueprints and steel beams, not forged signatures and financial liability. Every avenue I explored led me back to the same dead end. Nathan had used my name as collateral, and unless I could prove fraud, I was on the hook with him. The burden of proof was mine, and Nathan was slippery. He'd covered his tracks well enough to make everything look legitimate. My gut told me if I confronted him again, he'd double down. He'd smile that same polished grin, insist we were in this together. That family means helping each other out. But it wasn't about family. Not this time. So I did what I always did when life felt too big to handle. I worked. Late nights on job sites, days reviewing structural plans for upcoming projects. I poured myself into the familiar rhythm of my trade, hammering out calculations, tweaking designs, doing the one thing I could always count on, building something solid from the ground up, but it didn't last. One evening, after reviewing bids for a commercial build downtown, my phone buzzed. It was from Henry Wyatt, a longtime business contact, someone I respected. We'd worked together on several builds over the years, always straightforward dealings. Evander, I got a call from Nathan today. He pitched me on a new project, said you were backing it. I froze, bile rising in my throat. What project? Mixed use space, some flashy thing near the riverfront. Said you'd be co-signing again, seeing as you're involved. But I figured I'd check with you first. I clenched the edge of the table, knuckles white. I'm not involved in anything Nathan's pitching. Henry's pause on the other end was enough to let the weight of it settle. Didn't think so. I exhaled slowly, steadying my voice. Thanks for checking. No problem, but Evander, you might want to get ahead of this. Word's going around you're tied up in some bad debts. That was it. The sinking realization that Nathan wasn't just dragging me into his mess, he was selling the illusion that I was part of it. I called him that night. I wasn't going to sit in the dark while my name got traded like currency. He picked up after 3 rings, too casually. Van, was wondering when you'd call. You've been using my name, I snapped. Again. Silence for a beat, then that smooth voice. It's business, Van. You know how this works. No, I bit out. I know how you work. Nathan laughed lightly, the kind of laugh that makes your blood boil. Look, I'm trying to keep things afloat. The riverfront deal is solid. Don't spin this. You've burned through your credit, and now you're using my reputation like a shield. That's harsh, he shot back, voice tightening. We're brothers. We've always looked out for each other. No, I've always looked out for you, I corrected, every word a nail in the coffin, but that ends now. A pause stretched out longer than before. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I leaned back, swallowing the anger that threatened to take over. Nathan, listen carefully. You drag my name through the mud one more time and I'll come for you. Legal, personal, I don't care. Legal? His voice cracked slightly, the first chip in his polished exterior. You'd sue your own brother? I'd protect myself. For once, Nathan didn't have a quick answer. I hung up before he could find one, but even as I ended the call, I knew I was standing at the edge of something bigger. Nathan wouldn't stop. He never had. He'd dig deeper, claw his way through any line I tried to draw until there was nothing left but ruins. Next morning, a letter arrived from the bank. The loan Nathan forged under my name, payments were delinquent. The first notice, 2 more like it, and they'd move toward collections. My credit would be shattered. I stood in my kitchen, letter trembling in my hand, and felt the rage settle beneath my ribs like a fire waiting to burn. This wasn't going away. Nathan was going to learn that I wasn't his fallback plan. Ever had someone trade your trust for their survival? It changes the way you see everything. The weight of Nathan's betrayal sat on my chest like a cinder block. I couldn't ignore it anymore. The late payments, the whispers from colleagues, the nagging sense that I was trapped in a narrative Nathan had written for me. It was closing in. I sat at my drafting table that evening, blueprints spread out before me, but my mind wasn't on steel beams or foundation lines. It was on the cracks Nathan had carved into my life. For all my attempts to stay separate from the family business, to build my own path, here I was again, dragged back into the mess. I needed clarity, answers, something solid to stand on, so I did the one thing I'd avoided for too long. I called my mother. Evander, she answered, voice warm, rehearsed. It's been too long? I skipped the pleasantries. Did you know about the loan? A pause, the kind that gives you just enough time to brace for the worst. Loan? She repeated, feigning confusion, but her voice cracked, just a hair. The one Nathan took out, using my name, $750,000. Silence. Then a soft sigh, like she was the one burdened. Honey, Nathan's been under a lot of pressure. The market turned on him. So you knew, I bit out, my throat tightening. You knew and said nothing. Her voice hardened, the warmth gone. This isn't about pointing fingers, Evander. We're family. We support each other when times get tough. No, I said, standing, pacing the room. Supporting each other means asking. It means respect. It means keeping things in the family, she countered, her tone now clipped, defensive. Nathan was trying to save the business. He thought you'd understand. I swallowed back the heat rising in my chest. I'm not a silent partner in this. He forged my name. That's not family, that's fraud. You've always been so dramatic, she said, sighing again. Nathan's trying to make it right. By dragging me deeper? Her voice softened again, almost pleading. You've always been the steady one, Evander. He needs you. I froze. There it was. The role I'd always been cast in, the dependable one, the fallback, the one they could lean on when Nathan's charm ran dry. I ended the call without another word. The next day, I drove downtown, needing to clear my head. I walked past the construction site of the riverfront property Nathan had pitched to Henry. The framework was barely up, steel skeletons reaching toward the sky, ambitious, expensive, and likely doomed. As I stood there watching the workers move like ants across the beams, someone called my name. Evander? I turned to see Rebecca Miles, a real estate attorney I'd crossed paths with a few times over the years, smart, sharp. She handled contracts for several developers in town. Didn't expect to see you here, she said, adjusting her sunglasses. Checking on a disaster before it collapses, I muttered, nodding toward the site. Rebecca arched a brow. Nathan's project? I gave her a tight smile. What do you know about it? She crossed her arms, considering me for a beat. More than I should, probably. Word is the financing's shaky. Some of the investors are getting nervous. Because they should be, I said. And then because I needed to say it out loud. Nathan forged my name to back one of his loans. Rebecca's eyes widened just slightly, the professional mask slipping. That's serious. I know, she hesitated, then lowered her voice. If you want help, real help, I can dig into it. See what's on record. What liabilities are really tied to your name? I nodded slowly. I might take you up on that. Back at home, I couldn't sit still. I pulled out my own records, my credit reports, loan documents Nathan had touched. I needed to understand every inch of the trap I was in. Then late that night, another blow, an email from Hamilton Financial Group, subject, delinquent notice, joint account, Evander Locke. Per the agreement under your co-signed loan, we must inform you that failure to make minimum payments within 30 days will result in asset seizure per contract terms. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Nathan hadn't just defaulted, he'd dragged me into the red zone, and that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about cleaning up Nathan's mess, it was about protecting my future, my work, my name. I picked up the phone and called Rebecca. I need to know everything, I told her. Every paper trail Nathan's left with my name on it. You got it, she said without hesitation. This wasn't going to be easy. But I wasn't about to let Nathan write the ending to my story. Ever faced a storm and felt it closing in? There's a point where you stop running and start building your defenses. What would you do in Evander's shoes? I hadn't slept much in days. Every time I closed my eyes, numbers floated behind my lids. $750,000, 30 days delinquent, asset seizure. The stakes weren't just high, they were personal. My reputation, my livelihood, everything I'd worked to build from the ground up, all threatened because my brother couldn't face his own mess. The call from Rebecca came in just after noon. Her voice was low, serious. I dug into Nathan's financials, she said, without preamble. It's worse than we thought. I rubbed at my jaw, leaning against my kitchen counter. How bad? He's got multiple properties leveraged to the hilt. Some of those loans are cross-collateralized, which means if one goes belly up, the others follow, and your name isn't just on the $750,000. There's a second loan, $200,000. The room spun. No, that one I would have known about, Rebecca sighed. Not if he signed electronically on your behalf. I've seen this before. Digital signatures leave just enough of a gray area, but your name's on the paperwork. I dropped into a chair, trying to steady my breathing. So I'm on the hook for nearly $1 million? Rebecca paused, then added, and he's behind on both. My fist clenched. Nathan hadn't just used me. He'd set me up to fall alongside him. I need options, I said, voice tighter than I meant. Fast. I can file an identity theft claim, she replied, but it'll take time. The lenders won't back off immediately, and Nathan's the one who has to respond. Legally, it's a mess. Of course it was. I ended the call and stared at the stack of unpaid invoices on my desk. Freelance gigs weren't going to cover this kind of disaster. And the worst part, my family, my own blood, had done this. I drove to the site of Nathan's latest project that afternoon. The skeletal remains of luxury condos stared back at me, steel beams half assembled, cranes idle. The place looked frozen mid-collapse, just waiting for gravity to finish the job. Nathan wasn't there. But I spotted Henry Cross, our father's old friend, now one of Nathan's key investors, a man who knew the family name still meant something. His face was flushed, frustration practically steaming from him. "Evander," he said as I approached, squinting into the sun. "I was hoping I'd see you." I raised an eyebrow. "You still trusting Nathan with your money?" Henry scowled. "I'm not sure I have much of a choice. I've got 6 figures tied up in this, and now I'm hearing about missed payments, delays." I shook my head. "Nathan's burning through everyone's goodwill." Henry's lips pressed into a thin line. "I didn't invest in Nathan. I invested in the parish name, in what your father built." I winced. There it was again, legacy. A word that chained me to Nathan's mistakes, whether I wanted it or not. "I'm not my father," I said, "and I'm not part of this." Henry studied me. "Aren't you, though? I've seen your name on the loan documents." My stomach twisted. "Not by choice." He gave me a look like he wasn't sure whether to believe me. "I'll tell you what," he said finally. "If you're willing to step in, even just consult, I might be able to keep some of the investors steady. Buy time." I laughed, bitter. "You want me to bail Nathan out again?" "I want you to protect what's left," Henry shot back, "for all of us." I left him standing there, unsure whether to feel angry at him or myself. That night, as the sun dipped below the skyline, I found myself outside Nathan's downtown condo. His place was everything mine wasn't. Sleek, modern, overpriced. I knocked once, hard. He answered in a t-shirt and designer jeans, acting like I'd just interrupted his peaceful evening. "Evander," he drawled, "didn't expect to see you." I shoved past him into the living room. "We need to talk." Nathan shut the door slowly. "If this is about the loan, 2 loans," I snapped. "The second one, $200,000, you forged my name again." Nathan's expression faltered for just a second before the smirk returned. "It's business, Evander. You know how tight things got when the market shifted." "You could have asked," he laughed, hollow. "And you would have said no. You always say no." "Because I know better." My voice rose, fists clenched at my sides. "You're gambling with my life, my credit, my future." Nathan leaned against the wall, arms crossed, like this was just another argument we'd had growing up. "You've always been too cautious. Dad would have understood risk." I froze. "Don't," I said, voice low, dangerous. "Don't drag him into this." Nathan shrugged. "I'm just saying he knew what it meant to go big." I stepped closer, forcing him to meet my eyes. "Dad never stole from his family." Nathan's smile faltered, cracking at the edges. I turned for the door, but his voice stopped me cold. "You walk away now, you'll lose everything too," he called after me. "The banks won't care whose fault it was." I looked back at him, feeling the weight of those words settle. "Maybe," I said quietly. "But I'm done letting you use me as your safety net." I walked out. Nathan always had a knack for performance, whether it was charming investors or smoothing over family gatherings with a smile that never quite reached his eyes. He knew how to play his role. So when word reached me that he was hosting a reassurance dinner with his key investors, I wasn't surprised. I was, however, ready. Henry Cross would be there, his patience thinning as Velmont Estates began missing payment deadlines. Nathan's plan, no doubt, was to dazzle him with false projections, maybe buy himself a few more months. But what Nathan didn't know was that I'd spent the last few weeks quietly gathering every thread of his financial deceit, tying them into a noose he wouldn't see coming. I arrived at the private dining room 10 minutes early, not invited, of course, but I knew the maitre d'. He owed me a favor from a renovation project I'd consulted on years back. Funny how those things come back around. The room was all mahogany and soft candlelight, the kind of ambiance meant to lull people into trust. Nathan stood at the head of the table, swirling a glass of red wine, already mid-spiel about market rebounds and strategic pivots. Henry Cross sat directly across from him, his sharp gaze steady but skeptical, his jaw working like he was chewing on doubt. I stepped into the room, clearing my throat. "Evening, gentlemen." Nathan's smile froze. "Evander, this is a private meeting." Henry leaned back, crossing his arms. "Let him speak. You've had your turn." Nathan's eyes flickered. He tried to regain control. "We're in delicate negotiations." I cut him off with a folder, thick with printed emails, bank statements, and internal memos. "Negotiations built on sand." Henry took the folder, flipping through the pages slowly, his brow furrowing deeper with each line. "What is this?" "Evidence," I said, steady, "of Nathan leveraging company assets to cover personal debts, using my name, my credit to secure loans under false pretenses." Nathan's face flushed crimson. "That's slander." "It's documentation," I replied calmly, "which, unlike your word, tends to hold up under scrutiny." Henry didn't look up. "Nathan, is this true?" Nathan shifted in his seat, searching for his usual bravado, but the cracks showed. "There have been short-term adjustments." Henry's hand slammed the folder shut. "Adjustments? You've been cooking the books." Silence fell, thick and suffocating. Nathan's voice dropped to a pleading tone. "Henry, listen, this can be managed. We've weathered worse." But Henry wasn't listening. He turned to me. "How long have you known?" I met his gaze. Long enough to know it wasn't salvageable, but I waited, gave him a chance to fix it. He doubled down instead. Nathan surged to his feet. "You think this is noble? Airing family business in front of outsiders?" I held his stare, steady. "You made me part of your mess when you forged my signature. This stopped being just family business the moment you risked people's livelihoods." Henry stood too, gathering the folder. "Nathan, we're done. I'll be calling a board meeting first thing tomorrow." Nathan reached out, desperate. "Henry, wait, we can..." Henry brushed past him. "Don't. You've spent every ounce of goodwill you had." The door closed behind him with a quiet finality. Nathan sagged back into his chair, the air deflated from him. For the first time, he looked like a man who knew the ground beneath him was gone. I turned to leave, but paused at the door. "You know, Nathan, you always accused me of standing in your shadow, but it turns out you were the one afraid of standing on your own." I left him there, alone with the wreckage he'd built. The boardroom smelled of polished wood and desperation. I stood at the far end, hands in my pockets, watching Nathan fumble through his defense. The board members of Locke Development sat stiff-backed, their eyes swinging between Nathan and the stack of papers I'd delivered the day before. Evidence didn't care about charm, and neither did Henry Cross, seated at the head of the table like a judge waiting for the gavel to fall. Nathan's voice wavered, trying to find footing on ground that had already crumbled beneath him. "This is a misunderstanding. Restructuring the debt was a necessary move. We've always been adaptable." Henry's jaw clenched. "Adaptable is one thing. Hiding liabilities under your brother's name is fraud." The word hung in the air like smoke. Nathan's gaze darted toward me. "Evander, tell them. You've known about this. Tell them I had no choice." I didn't move. "You always had a choice, Nathan. You just didn't like the ones that required honesty." For a moment, all I could hear was the faint hum of the overhead lights. I scanned the room, men and women who'd trusted Nathan with their investments, their reputations. None of them looked eager to back him now. "Nathan," Henry leaned forward, folding his hands, "the board will be voting to remove you from your position as CEO, effective immediately." Nathan flinched like he'd been slapped. "You can't be serious." A soft, humorless chuckle escaped me before I could stop it. "After all this, they'd be fools not to." Nathan's eyes darkened, his chest heaving like he was preparing for a fight, but there was no fight left to be had. The votes came in, unanimous, his fate sealed with quiet, professional nods. When the meeting adjourned, Nathan slumped in his chair, staring down at the polished table like it could offer him an escape. I walked past him toward the door, pausing only when he spoke. What now? His voice cracked at the edges. A man stripped bare of the armor he'd worn for years. Is this what you wanted? To see me humiliated? I turned back slowly, letting him see my face, calm, resolved. No, I wanted you to take responsibility. I gave you that chance more than once. You chose to double down on the lies. His shoulders sagged. You think you're better than me? I stepped closer, leaning down just enough so he had no choice but to look me in the eye. No, Nathan, I just think I know the value of sleeping at night without wondering when it'll all catch up. He looked away, and I left him there, alone, but not because I wanted him to be, because that's where he'd left himself. 2 months passed. The fallout from Nathan's removal rippled through Locke development like aftershocks. The company survived barely, with Henry stepping in as interim CEO. There were lawsuits to settle, debts to renegotiate, and a reputation to rebuild. I returned to my freelance work, smaller projects, hands-on work that reminded me why I'd chosen this life in the first place. I turned down Henry's offer to take a permanent leadership role. I'd had enough of boardrooms for a lifetime. One evening, while reviewing plans for a new civic center, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it ring once, twice, then picked up. Evander Locke, a familiar voice crackled on the line. Evander, it's Dad. Silence stretched between us, thick and uneasy. My father had stayed silent through everything, offering no defense, no apology. I heard what happened, he continued. Your brother, it's a mess. I leaned back in my chair, watching the sunset over the rooftops. Yeah, it is. Another pause. Your mother has been asking about you. She'd like to see you. I thought about it. About family dinners where Nathan dominated every conversation. About my parents nodding along like his ambitions were theirs too. About years of playing the role of the simple one, the one they didn't worry about. I'm not sure, I said finally. I've spent a long time learning how to live without their approval. A heavy sigh on the other end. Evander, you're still family. I smiled, soft but tired. That's the thing about family. It doesn't mean what people think it does. It's not just about blood. I let the silence answer for me before ending the call. Sometimes the hardest choice is walking away without looking back. Have you ever had to let go of something or someone to find your own peace? I'd love to hear your story. Sometimes the hardest lesson we learn is that family can fail us, and when they do, it's not your responsibility to keep holding the pieces together. Walking away from what's broken doesn't make you weak, it makes you whole again. I spent years believing loyalty meant sacrificing my peace, but I've learned that respect, both given and received, is the foundation for any true relationship. What about you? Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against those closest to you? I'd love to hear your story. Drop a comment or just tell me where you're watching from. And if this video resonated with you, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. There's more to come, and I hope you'll be here for it.